Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about tech debt. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, how do you measure tech debt on a project? Well, so I usually say that the difference between a good and a bad architecture of a system is measured in feasibility of features, or how feasible it is to build something. What that basically means is that if you find it easy or fairly straightforward to implement something, it's a good sign that the architecture is right for the thing that you are building. If you find it difficult to build even basic things, that's a big red warning flag that something is very, very wrong with your architecture. I've been in situations, guys, where I have had a table of data and my user wanted to be able to sort the table based on the headers and so forth. And the backend guy said, no, we can't do that. And I go, you're telling me I can't sort a list of data? No, exactly. That's a big problem. That's a big problem, because it's an expected feature for literally practically every single user we're gonna have. So there's probably some issues and tech debt related to that, or architectural decisions that haven't been really made in a good, sustainable way. So the way that I usually measure tech debt is really down to that, like how easy is it for us to ship things with confidence. That's the main thing. So for me, tech debt is it's a necessary evil. There's always going to be tech debt, but the way that you measure how much of it you have and how severe the problem has been, like, that's one part of it. But then there's also the emotional part, which I think is very, very important as well. The emotional part is measured in how long does a story sit in ready for production until it makes its way to the release. Why is that significant? Well, because if you are, unless you have like a release master or something like that, the release is the scariest point in the life cycle of every story for every software developer. The reason why it's the most scary one is because when you hit that button, your code goes from being in a safe environment that you can control, where nobody's going to blame you if something breaks, to going out into production. And if you break something in production, you're blamed. Well, not blamed, but this is where the consequences start coming your way, right? So that is definitely the most scary thing, and it never fails, guys. It never ever fails. When a system accumulates too much tech debt, developers are afraid to release things into production. Salespeople are scared of demoing the product or like things like that, because it's always quote unquote so unstable, or things are always broken, etc., etc. You start losing trust in the system. And as I've said in many videos before, my primary focus as a software developer or like a tech lead or something like that, when I do that sort of thing, is trust. Trust in the people, trust in the system. That is the thing that makes everything work. It's the whole premise of human society. Like, that's why everything works, because you trust that it will work. And without that, it's then everything starts rotting from that point on. And there is nothing, as I like to say, nothing is more important than the stability of the system. Delivery deadlines, like everything else is secondary. If the system does not work, it does not work. And so for me to measure roughly how much tech debt I have, it comes down to one part understanding, as I said, how often are we blocked on building things, and the other part is how long does it take for my coworkers, or like the software developers that I work with, to release things, and like how scared are they of doing that. Because if I can see, and I see this all the time, I see software developers selectively pick stories that they know are low risk. They try to avoid risky stuff. I see them ignore releasing things when they have time. I see them not help out with testing and like things that are a pain, etc., etc. I see them acting very selfishly, and not only selfishly, but they're intimidated by releasing things. when you see that sort of behavior and you see POs and other people, like other stakeholders, try to like avoid using certain features, or like they learn how to maneuver through the pain and so forth, that is a big, these are all the red flags that I'm looking for a really shitty system and a lot of tech debt. These are the two main things. But then I, as a software developer, also have the ability to, of course, look at the code. And that's usually how I address these sorts of things. I take a look at the software, like the code base, and I look at, okay, these are the main concept, these are the tools that we have bet on. And I usually have a fairly good eye for what a quality development process looks like. And I can immediately tell based on, okay, these are the bets that have been done. I know for a fact that, okay, these have been bad decisions, these are good decisions, these things are lacking, which we are going to need if we're going to like fix this problem and so forth. Because you can sort of, when you work for long enough, you sort of get a sixth sense for what is the maturity of the team, like how they work and like how well do they know how to actually run a software team. And the second thing is how mature is the code base. I'm not talking just like how much code is there, but rather an example would be, are they running everything in vanilla JavaScript, or are they using TypeScript as an example? Because if it's all in JavaScript, for example, that tells you one thing. If it's all in TypeScript, it tells you another thing. And that makes sense. Like when you work in long enough, you sort of know what things needs to be in place for certain things to not be an issue, or like the trade-offs and so forth. It's almost like watching someone who is a beginner practice a sport versus seeing someone who is a professional or something like that. You can see the difference in form. That sort of thing is what you start learning as you get more into software development and you get more experienced. So that's usually how I measure tech debt. I don't believe at all. I think it's hilariously naive to try to measure tech debt through like systems, like automated systems and stuff like that. There is no way for you to do that at present, and I go as far as to say that there is no more accurate measurement of technical depth or things like that than the gut feeling of a senior software developer. Because frankly, tech debt is a more complicated problem than how like the mathematical complexity of your files or your methods or whatever. There is no computer today that can figure this out, simply because the one part of tech debt is absolutely that there are like hard limitations on what you want to do, but at the end of the day, it's a mental state. Tech debt is a mental state for people. It's something where things feel bad. They feel as if they're hard to do. They feel unmotivating, like they have a psychological effect on the team and the stakeholders using the system. And the reason why that is so important is because that psychological effect is the thing that continues snowballing on you. It's the broken window principle. If you have one broken window, you're going to have 2, and then 4, and then 8, and it's just going to continue. That is exactly what happens with tech debt. You make a few bad decisions, and usually they are fairly naive or like innocent, but they don't turn out all that well, and then it feels to the next person as if this code base is kind of shitty, so why should you try to make it better? So you just continue doing the thing, and then it continues, and so forth and so forth. And that finally leads to an unreliable system with a lot of bugs. The closest measurement you can, if you're gonna like put a number on tech debt, is, in my opinion, time spent on bugs, usually. Because bugs are a complete waste. It's a complete waste of time. So if you spend more time fixing bugs than shipping features, and whenever you release something there are bugs related to shipping something, that's the closest thing to an objective number that you can get. So what I want you to take away from this is that I personally measure tech debt through 2 primary ways. Number 1 is how like what is the state of the code base, things like the system's reliability. Do people trust the system? Do they are they afraid of releasing things? Are the developers trying to avoid picking specific stores because it's a quote-unquote shit show or things like that? And the second part is going to be how is it to ship things. If you can practically never ship anything because it takes a million years to do it, or there's always bugs or things like that whenever you release something, or you actually spend more time on bugs than anything else, then these are very, very big red warning flags. And then as a side, like an optional thing, because I'm a software developer, which makes this easier for me, you can look at the state of the code base. If you know that they're using a specific stack and you know for a fact that there are things missing in the code base, like maybe they're not using unit tests, or maybe they're, as I said, using vanilla JavaScript in a big product without TypeScript or something like that. These sorts of hygiene things that do make the big difference when you're scaling things or making serious projects. If those things are missing, you can already start, you can pretty much imagine, and if you usually find that if you start looking at the pull requests, that the overall development process itself is actually just perpetuating more legacy and more tech debt. And that is the main danger, in my opinion, with having severe tech debt. When people stop treating the system as something that is worthy of a good investment, or like worthy of doing good work on, then you're fucked, basically. You're going to need some type of super developer who comes in and helps raise everything. You're going to need yourself a Keanu Reeves or something that basically just goes right in and does a one man or one woman type of thing, or you're going to have to basically fire everybody who's working on that project, because you can't fix tech debt without fixing the psychological impact it has on the people working there first. Have a great day.